Kumar, Managing Director of Prime Security, joins us. And Jakes, good morning. Thank you for joining us. Jakes, what should we start with? Markets or a tribute to the great man RNT?
I think markets at the end of the day are a subset of various actions, various endeavors of various groups, etc. But I think the person we're talking about today is way, way, way beyond all this. I think an institution is a group that's been credited for, let's say, having set up virtually the first company in every sector that we can think of, whether it's steel, whether it's software, whether it's hotels, whether it is a social sciences institute, charity, the entire thing about corporate governance, the ambition of capitalism, along with the soft hand of social impact. I mean, I don't believe. Forget India. I think the world has seen the passing of a true generation, I would say. It's not even a legacy, it's way, way beyond that.
What made Tata Group so different and special? There is no other parallel in the world for a company or for a group, from steel to steel, from aviation to semiconductor, from software to now moving into semiconductors. What makes this group so special? Because the world is moving today towards specialization. Great companies like Nvidia and Microsoft, they are very specialist and niche focused companies. But here's a group which is expanding, and it is expanding into new businesses which is so extraordinary.
I think the beauty is that each company is super specialized and a dominant player and an industry leader and taking steps which we haven't seen before. I mean, going out of the country and making $10 billion acquisitions of auto companies in Europe, or for instance, a steel company in UK. I mean, these are not things that people could even imagine could happen out of India had it not been for R&D. So the way I see this is that if you do the sort of super specialized corporate activity with just basic governance, and these guys actually had exceptionally higher levels of governance. The people in the group, I mean, forget the founders whose visions that these specialists or these CEOs of different companies are embodying. But the reality is, if you do the right thing in business and do it rightly, the correct way, profits will follow. So I don't believe that ever you see a Tata management not talking about market cap, return on capital, etc. But above all, it is assumed other groups make it out to be a virtue. The Tatas have actually assumed and taken for granted that the only way to do things right is the right way. And I think that is the big thing, that supporting charity, supporting children with cancer. I mean, these things have just come as a natural consequence of their corporate activity or their natural consequence of their activity. This has not been something that has had to be told to them or has had to be steeped into their system. This comes almost. I mean, that's the ingraining of the. They used to talk about the TAS, the Tata administration in the good old 80s and 90s, and the kind of people who used to come out of that, the industry leaders, and that talks about the stellar qualities that they had during their training there. That some of the finest leaders in the country came from the corporate leaders. So all credit to the group, and we will certainly miss, but I think we need to savor the legacy, and that's the important thing as we go on.
Tata Group of companies, Jakes. Which are the Tata Group of companies which are good but mature in terms of business curve? Which are the Tata Group companies which would be compounding, for next few years? And which are some of the Tata Group companies which are young, agile, and really could be the high growth businesses for the Tata Group?
Steel has its organic growth that's reasonably mature. It's extremely in a very competitive sort of landscape, as also is the auto company. Perhaps the unshackling of JLR from the CV and PV businesses of India may bring about a new giant in the world, if you will. Apart from that, the power is a growing business, especially with entry into green power. Hotels is a good business growing with multiple formats coming through. The new exciting businesses could well be in the tech space, and not to forget Trent, which has surprised everybody. With becoming the sort of the latest and the most exciting kid on the block. But don't forget the TCS kind of story where solid cash flows allow you to keep reinventing yourself, and TCS could produce several surprises for us over the years, and their entry into various aspects of technology, including now AI, could actually change and refashion the company quite a bit. But the Tata Elxsis of the world, Tata Technologies, are potentially the new age players, and maybe their foray into things like telecom infrastructure and so on and so forth. So I think there are spaces, but the one good thing about the Tatas is their ability to manage the mature businesses and embody and embrace the new age businesses with equal elan. I think that's been the hallmark of the group. All this in a backdrop of integrity, humility, and gratitude.
Shift gears from local to global. There are two issues in the world, which is this China comeback real? What it means for India? And second is the Middle East crisis. What are your thoughts on both?
Well, the Middle East crisis, my own assessment is crisis of that kind will continue. And, we've seen whether it's Ukraine or Middle East, crises are never resolved completely. I mean, you never have ceasefire on a permanent basis, as it were, because some of these are steeped in a combination of religion, a combination of basic political divides, etc. So keeping that apart, and I think that will keep happening. But the China factor, to my mind, and I've kind of tweeted about it pretty extensively. How do you square off if it was so easy? If it was so easy that a market could be pulled up all of 30% in a week to show you a 52-week high and a 52-week low in the same week. I mean, are we talking about a hollow market or are we talking about a hollow market? I mean, it's incredible how it's like saying that the Nifty was at 20,000 on 10th of October when I'm interviewing, and a week from today it's at 26,000. And we're all gung-ho about the fact that something has dramatically changed in India. For all that, there's been actually a fair amount of lack of volatility in a trendless, in a trending, slow, gradually building up bull market in India, which has been buoyed by the SIP flows, much like the US market over 3 decades has been buoyed by the 401k flows. And that, to my mind, is the big telling story of the Indian markets, where it's a gradually climbing of wall of worry, climbing skepticism, climbing issues, climbing all kinds of things, as opposed to a US market which had the tailwinds of the dollar being the reserve currency, people wanting to invest in US as a first line of defense, and so on and so forth. And here comes China, where literally the market's flatlined over 52 weeks. And suddenly you have a 30% move, and we're all supposed to get very excited. And what did the policy announcement actually say? Largely, it was that they were going to buy out real estate. I mean, the government talking about investing and buying out the inventory of builders, who ostensibly will then get money to pay back institutions they owed money to, who then pay back the government. Otherwise, the government would have had a huge hole on its fisc, if you will. So, I mean, to my mind, is the left hand giving the right hand. This is not amused most people. And the summary comes from, some of the stalwarts globally who summarize this in one line, saying as long as the current dispensation is at the helm in China, they want to have nothing to do with China. So, I mean, I'm a naysayer of a very high order, but my voice doesn't count as much as some of the big global voices which indicate, probably without even reason, I'm actually giving you reasons to believe. And if it was so easy to have sort of jump-started this whole thing, why didn't the management, the helm in China, do this over the last 1, 2, 3 years? It's a country that is replete with production, but fewer and fewer people who are takers, because This manufacturing capacity, which has undercut everybody in the world, is now facing protection across the board from people in the world. Every country is putting all kinds of, should I say, you know, putting the gates down on free imports from China. In the same context, you have their consumption, which has suffered hugely because of, sort of ill-governed policies, whether it's one-child policy
Right.
or otherwise. Every successful entrepreneur in China wants to leave.
Jake,
Or has,
did you just realize that I'm sharing screen with you and Ramesh bhai? I mean, what an honor it's for me. I'm in the middle. I'm in the middle. But
it's an
yeah.
honor for it's an honor for me as well. It doesn't happen very often, like the Ailey's comment once in 84 years or whatever it is. And I'm not sure if the two of us have longevity enough to sort of be there for the next Ailey's comment moment.
No, no, sir. I mean, don't say that. But yeah, I mean, for me, it's a personal honor. Should I look at my left? Should I look at my right? I'm looking at the center in the camera because I can see both of you. And then Aisha is also joining, my lucky day.
Our lucky day now. Thank you, Nikunj, for very kind words.
Well, the very kind words, Nikunj, and I think it's a good sign for you to say bye to me and welcome your next guest.
No, Jakes, I didn't say bye. We are getting into long, engaging conversation, but I'm going to prompt Ramesh bhai to just, share his one most memorable memory about Tata Group. He's tracked this group very, very closely. And Mr. Damani, this is one corporate group which is old but young. It's a corporate group which is investing in businesses of future, yet ensuring that the businesses of the past, they stay alive.
Yeah, Nikunj, thank you so much for having me on your show. It's a great pleasure to be on it. Of course, I've invested in a lot of Tata Group companies over my 30-year career. As you know, the walk from Dallas Street to Bombay House is a very short walk. So I watched this group with fascination. Clearly, one of the best conglomerates out of India. Unfortunately, I've not had the pleasure of interacting on a personal level with Ratan Tata myself. But I'll tell you an interesting story, Nikunj. When I did my MBA and I came back to India to start my business, I was addicted to reading the Wall Street Journal even in the early 90s. So finally, I found a vendor who would supply that to me. And one day, idly, I asked him, I said, how many copies of the Wall Street Journal do you supply? And he said, well, we supply 3 copies. I was really struck at the small number and asked him, who did he supply to? And he said, well, he supplied it to the SBI chairman, to Bombay House, Ratan Tata, and then to me. So I knew I was in good company reading what Ratan Tata read. So that was my interaction with him in a manner of speaking. But of course, we've been very fortunate to participate in so many of the great stocks that he has unleashed. As they say that well done is better than well said. And Ratan could do both things very well. Not only articulate a vision, but also execute for shareholders and then give back to philanthropy. As I often called him, he's the conscious keeper for India Incorporated.
Mr. Damani, now the Tata Group is stable. They are known for taking long-term bets. But do you think somewhere Mr. Ratan Tata also had this ability to understand risk? The fact that he acquired companies, took Tata Global, after 1991, India was opening and Tata Group comes out and they really go all out with their global ambitions, whether it is Chorus or whether it is JLR. So his ability to take risk was also quite extraordinary.
Absolutely. I think we celebrate his philanthropy and rightly so. But his ability to see ahead and put money on the table, it starts with the gene of the Tatas. When they set up Tata Iron and Steel or when they set up the Taj Mahal Hotel in Bombay, it was considered pretty stupid and pretty risky move to do that. And yet over time, the wisdom of that move has shown through. So I think when they did the acquisitions, there was a lot of skepticism, particularly as you recall about JLR acquisition. But today it's a cash cow in their business empire. So I think we need to celebrate both parts of his life. One part is, of course, the great philanthropic institutions and the amount they have touched our lives. But the second is, and the underappreciated fact is that this bull market has been led by, among other shares, also by the Tata Group companies. Trent has gone from a few 100,000 crores company to a 3.5 lakh crore market cap company. It's probably one of the stocks leading this bull market ahead. The other group companies, Titan, Tata Motors, Taj Hotels, have done equally well. So I think one of the underappreciated facts is the amount of wealth that is created for investors.
We were talking about as to how ahead of the curve he's been, when it comes to some of the private investments that he made in some of the startups as well. And, these are all household names pretty much. Everything from an urban company to a Snapdeal, CureFit, Lenskart, Car Dekho, even Ola Electric, which, recently finally listed. So, his personal investments as well really speak for the kind of visionary that he was. And, the thought process was decades ahead.
Burdened by having to look after the huge conglomerates businesses that he ran. So he invested in these startups, and that did very well. But Aisha, if I may, I'd like to point out that not only in good times, but there were a couple of companies that went through a lot of crisis when he was on the helm. The most famous example is Tata Finance, when some top-level management diverted money and put it in the last street and lost money. And instead of taking the legal liability, which was his, he took the moral responsibility and made sure that all the stakeholders, all the deposit holders were paid back in full. So that was not the legal requirement. In fact, in the recent book that I read, that they were so concerned that people got the money when they needed it. They even kept helicopters on hire to transfer money to some outstation places if people requested money. But the Tata brand name itself was such that there's very few redemptions, and people believed the Tatas when they said that everything would be taken care of. So I think Ratan Tata was, in many ways, to copy the name of a movie title, a man for all seasons. It's been a great honor that to have watched him and to observe him over the last 30 years.
Stocks you own, Ramesh, and how many you plan to own, and how many you're planning to buy?
Could you repeat that question?
No, how many Tata stocks, as a shareholder, you had a very happy experience with?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think my first experience was in a company that they're no longer associated with, Tata Honeywell. We bought that for a few hundred rupees. Today it's more like 45, 50,000 rupees. It's been a great, extraordinary thing. A company called CMC, which Tata TCS acquired, made me my first 200 bagger in the stock market. Currently, I own, of course, a lot of the retail stocks, the Tata Motors franchise. So it's been a very rewarding pick for shareholders. And like I mentioned earlier, Nikunj, that in 4 or 5 years ago, as a friend Rakesh Jujunwala made a big bet on the Tata Group. If you look back at the amount of outperformance that the group has given, it's extraordinary. And with much lesser volatility, much lesser raising of capital, much more productivity of resources. So we've all been blessed to being able to invest in that corporate space that they own, because it often jokingly called in the last week the widower's stock, because widows also own it and they never sell it. And I think there's good wisdom to it, there's good reason to it, because they always deliver for shareholders. Sometimes it takes a few more years, but ultimately they figure out the business model and deliver. So we are very blessed to have that group in our midst.
And those on your screens, you can see the live visuals coming in from the NCPA grounds, where the public can then pay tribute to Ratan Tata's mortal remains, and they are getting set now for the state funeral. It's actually from his residence. I stand corrected at that. That's Bakhtawar in South Mumbai. But Jakes, your memory really of Ratan Tata? I mean, they always say that we remain immortal in the memories that we leave behind in the people. What's the one thing that you would remember him with?
I think in many senses, he defined everything that we in our lifetime would have wanted to achieve. Which is establishing industries, creating categories, creating companies, and yet having the soft hand which very silently did what was right. And in a very simple way, the sort of doing things right leads to profit is not easily understood. People assume they have to do something different. People assume they have to do something not so straight and have to be extra clever. Whereas I think he embodied the fact that, and I remember this always, that continuously, without actually having to ever be asked, they would keep doing the right thing. You could fault them at times on decisions taken too early in the game, maybe risks that played out much more in the short run, but over a longer period of time, they handled it. Their handling of mergers, amalgamations. I mean, it's just been something that case studies are not written about, but seen and experienced. It's one of those things where you say that the previous generation, would have would have been in admiration and awe of Ratan Tata, we would have been looking and saying, this is the kind of group to invest in. And the next generation would find any number of attributes to say that, I know several youngsters who bumped into Ratan Tata at a trend store or something, had a chat with him, had a coffee with him, and moved on as if he was one other person. Much like the way the industrialists and tycoons, if you will, in the West, the entrepreneurs meet you in a walk down in California or whatever. I mean, there's humility personified. There's, I just think we need to be grateful for this kind of a group, which is just, set the standards on almost all corporate governance parameters. But I also think that it's almost poetic tribute that the last 2 years have seen a 21 gun salute in terms of the markets rewarding, but more importantly, saluting this group. They say that markets see things coming, and maybe they didn't see the end coming, but they definitely saw the reason to salute a group as India marches ahead on an unheard of, unprecedented, and almost fantastic sort of bull market. And what better tribute to a person while he was alive of as I call it, a 21 gun tribute in terms of all guns firing in terms of Tata Group's re-rating. I think to me, that's really the sort of stuff that stories end with, and they sort of happily celebrated ever after kind of thing. So this is a legacy that we should savor and celebrate and move on.
Ramesh, Jakes, both of you, thank you so much for taking the time out and sharing this very sad moment that the country is grieving today. Ratan Tata is no more, and there you can see live visuals.
There comes a time when your heart calls for you to arise. Plant your feet solid into the ground. Decide your own limits, and then break right through them. Become something more. It's my time to rise.